It's most likely safe to say that the material universe is deterministic, but the agent of free will within this material deterministic universe is the consciousness. The imagination of a consciousness is determined by nothing. Now this is where people start talking about brains, impulses, peptides, endorphins, synapses, neurotransmitters, serotonin, and dopamine. But none of that really matters. This is the foundation that consciousness is seated in, but that's all it is, a foundation. None of these things dictate the content of an imagination. The same is true for dreaming. There are a multitude of factors in place that determine the ability to dream, but no factors in place that determine the content of a dream. In the entire materialistic universe that is deterministic, what is it being sustained in? What is its foundations rooted in? It is a context existing in total freedom. It's birthed from complete freedom. Freedom meaning unlimited or unrestricted by any law. Deterministic, or the opposite of freedom, slavery, meaning completely limited and restricted by law. So the source from which the deterministic universe manifests from is completely free, unrealized, undetermined, and unlimited in possibilities. It doesn't have to follow any law. It makes the laws. It is not even bound to the laws that it creates. It is not determined by anything, and it is not the effect of anything. It falls outside of all thoughts, concepts, belief systems, and scientific methods of mankind. It is the creator of causes that then become deterministic. And from the perspective of an observer that makes distinctions, you can't say that the universe is just one thing. And while true that the universe is just one thing, a oneness, a wholeness, this isn't the case, however, from the point of view of separation. So are you denying that we are in a dualistic universe from your perspective of separation? How can you then say that there is just determinism or free will? Neither of these are correct. Yeah, unfortunately, it's both. People, of course, don't like this idea because it takes a lot of steam and hot air out of arguments. Nah, people don't want to hear that. It's got to be just one or the other. I don't think so. And you're never going to come up with any scientific proof of it being just one or the other. You will, however, find lots of proof that it's both. And saying that there is only an illusion of free will is really saying nothing. For an illusion of something is just as good as the real something, is it not? What's the quantitative difference between being chased by a bear in your dream and being chased by a bear in your waking reality? Are you any less stressed or terrified? Much the same can be said about determinism. There is no actual determinism, but only an illusion of determinism. After all, what makes an illusion an illusion? Phenomenal aspects that don't have any substantial substance, right? We call dreams an illusion because we wake up from them. The dreaming phenomena is not lasting or permanent, and therefore cannot be said to be real. Yet we don't know we're dreaming while we are dreaming. And if we never woke up from a dream, how would we ever know that we are just dreaming? Nothing different can be said about the material, mundane, waking reality. First of all, we all die. You die and it's all gone. It's just the same as if you never existed. You say otherwise? Well, if you're dead, how exactly would you prove or confirm that you ever existed when there is no longer any you existing to confirm such an existence? This is where people will start pointing to others, saying that other people who are still alive could confirm my existence, right? Well, we might consider this a valid point, but it's really not saying much. As long as there are dreamers, there will be a dream context. As long as there are material perceivers, there will be a material context. But to say that this material context somehow has an existence independent of the material perceiver is just as silly as saying a dream context still exists independent of the dreamer. You say otherwise? Okay, so just for the sake of argument, let's take all consciousness out of the material universe. So now, where exactly is the universe located? What is its position? To whom does the universe exist when there is no longer any who existing? How can one confirm its existence when there is no longer a confirmer to make confirmations? Something can only exist if there is an agent present to recognize an existence to begin with. Saying otherwise is like saying there can be perception without the senses, reflection without a reflector, or effects without the causes. And just for the sake of argument, let's say the material universe exists independent of consciousness. It still doesn't have any substantial existence. The universe popped into being out of nothing. Any laws existing were not always so, but formed into such, and in much the same way will break down and decay out of such. Are you going to deny entropy? The entire material universe will break down and return to the source from which it came. Nothingness. This gives an illusion of substance because it seems like it takes an unfathomable amount of time. But from a beyond universal perspective, it's just the blink of an eye. After the universe has broken down and vanished, wherein is its existence? Wherein is the determinism or free will? Wherein is its substance, with or without consciousness? No matter what angle you decide to take, it all melts away. None of it is lasting or permanent. So therefore, determinism, just like free will, is just an illusion. At best, both of these concepts could only be called temporary aspects of functionality. Which brings up another key point. Free will and determinism are just concepts. Concepts that only have relevance to a specific, limited format. The thinking mind of a human being. The blind thinking mind that doesn't have a clue to what's really going on, other than from the translation of 5 sense tools that are only conveying an interpretation of what's actually going on, and further limited to only the things they have access to. So determinations cannot be made or realized without an agent of free will. They are fundamentally intertwined. The natural material universe generates a lot of randomness. And in much the same way, a computer can be programmed to generate randomness. If an aspect is generating randomness, even if it is programmed to do so, there is no way to achieve absolute certainty about any given result of a random generation. Randomness may be employed by mathematical probabilities, but there is nothing in mathematical probabilities that can predict or determine the outcome of such. Not to mention that mathematical probabilities is only so because it is contextualized, meaning relative, limited, and non-absolute. So mathematics, laws, and structure can be used to produce totally random, unpredictable, undeterminable results. Not to mention that all structure cannot even exist in the first place without chaos. If you say otherwise, then you are basically saying that there can be form without emptiness. Please explain how that's possible. How can there be a context without borders? How can there be form without a contextualized forum to contain it? You could take a jump and propose that there is no context, because everything is infinite and eternal. But this certainly wouldn't lend any credibility to substantiality. For even infinity and eternity must have a context, no? If nothing more than the context of a human mind. But if not, then nothing exists in the first place to hang any kind of label on. For if everything is limitless, then it cannot be said to be existing anywhere. It cannot be said to have any real time or location. If so, then where? When? What is its position? The second you name a position, then the eternal and infinite goes out the window and we are right back to context, which also cannot be said to exist because it is constantly changing and non-permanent. So if all it takes to produce deterministic results are set circumstances and conditions, which is never the case, by the way, then there should be a lot more predictability and duplication. Why aren't all snowflakes alike? If you could calibrate a machine to cast a rock into a pool of water at a set speed and distance, and you kept reloading the same rock over and over, would the ripples always be the same? The more times you roll a set of dice, the odds become lower and lower that you would roll the same sequence twice. Roll the dice enough times, and any number of trials has no chance of producing two duplicate sequences. This with a whole bunch of other factors to consider that can never be relied upon for consistency. The exact molecular structure of different sets of dice, how the dice change or wear down as they are rolled, all the different ways dice can be rolled, how does symmetry or asymmetry affect the probabilities, the varying conditions and circumstances any given trial is performed in. So the question becomes, what are people basing their certainty of absolute determinism or absolute free will on? Certainly not on anything that can be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Does math, physics, and laws of nature guarantee determinism? Well, let's take math, physics, and laws of nature into a black hole and see how they hold up. Does your ability to make a choice guarantee free will? The fact that you are confined to a context seems to indicate otherwise. For true freedom can only be defined as limitlessness and complete unrestriction, the complete antithesis of a contextualized being. The temporary aspects of functionality indicates that there is both free will and determinism. And surely this paradoxical conundrum will not be resolved or fleshed out by the puny, limited sense tools of a relative subjective human being that can only access about 0.1% of all that is. All you have are concepts of a mind, of some assumed external universe that you are a part of, yet think is separate from you. Whether you believe in absolute determinism or absolute free will doesn't reveal anything other than the proclivity of your psychology. People that lean towards determinism find comfort in conformity and structure. People that lean towards free will find comfort in rebelliousness and chaos. Neither is superior to the other. They are just your personal preferences. But don't fool yourself into thinking that either concept of determinism or free will are absolute. For there is no such thing as an absolute. Any absolute you could name is relative to a contextualization. So therefore, it is not absolute. It is relative to a contextualization. And it doesn't matter what you name. Chemistry, biology, physics, the speed of light, any religious concept. All of it is relative to a contextualization. So therefore, free will or determinism are not absolute. They are only so because they have a context that is not absolute. They only have meaning because there is a thinker there to think about it. And by the way, even the concept of absolutes being relative to a contextualization is not absolute either. The absolute of absolutes being relative to a contextualization is also relative to a contextualization. So before we close, I'm probably going to do another part. I'm not done with free will and determinism. Let's just quickly address this concept of a many-world multiverse, where all things that can happen do happen. Well, first off, whether or not this is the case is mere speculation. And secondly, even if this is the case, why is it necessarily deterministic? One could just as easily say that it's all spontaneous. Perhaps, again, it may be both. But in any case, then the question becomes, what is the many-world multiverse spectrum where anything that can happen, does happen, determined by? Or is it not determined and just all completely free will? Perhaps to answer this question, we need only ask ourselves a question. What kind of universe would you create? Would you create a universe where everything was structured and destined? Or would you create a universe where everything was chaotic and random? I don't know about you, but I would make it a mixture of both, which more than likely, that's what it is.